In the vibrant heart of London's music scene, a voice destined to echo through the halls of history was born amidst a whirlwind of emotion and chaos. Amy Winehouse, a name synonymous with raw talent and tragic destiny, entered the world not with a whisper, but with a reaction that would foretell her stirring impact on music and the world. From her earliest days, Amy was a force to be reckoned with. Known affectionately as Hurricane Amy, her relentless energy and unquenchable curiosity for life painted a vivid portrait of a soul both vibrant and vulnerable. With every note she sang, Amy invited us not just to listen, but to feel, to experience her world, one marked by profound passion and piercing pain. But behind the iconic beehive hairdo and the soulful eyes lay a complex journey marred by battles with love, fame, and inner demons. Amy's music, a blend of jazz, soul, and a hint of rebellion, wasn't just a soundtrack for her fans. It was a diary of her tumultuous life, each lyric a page, each melody a memory. Join us as we delve into the life of Amy Winehouse, exploring the highs and the heartbreaks of a woman whose voice became her legacy, and whose legacy became a beacon for all those who've ever found beauty in the broken. This is not just a story of music, it's a story of a muse who made the world listen, only to leave it too soon. Amy was born on the 14th of September 1983, 4 days late in Enfield, London. Her mother had spent the entire pregnancy convinced she was having another boy. When Amy was born, her mother simply shouted, "Oh shit." She took her first step at 1 and became known as Hurricane Amy from her incessant energy. There wasn't a climbing frame she wouldn't jump off or a thing she wouldn't try, but most of all, she loved to sing. A common phrase around the house was "shut up, Amy," and another nickname followed, "nudge," a Yiddish word meaning pest. At a young age, she ate a toadstool and had her stomach pumped for the first time. Her grandmother Cynthia had been in a band when younger and had dated the musician Ronnie Scott. She commanded respect from Amy and helped to inspire Amy's love of jazz. Cynthia was the first to see her granddaughter's ability and encouraged her to attend performing arts school. Cynthia also believed in mysticism, and when Amy was 5, held a séance where a voice told her someone always needs to look out for Amy. Her father, Mitch, was struggling financially and was frequently away on business trips, and her mother, Janice, felt she was left to raise the children alone. Amy adored her father, and he always returned with his arms full of gifts for her and her brother, Alex. Mitch had been having an affair for years, and when Amy was 9, he left Janice and remarried. Amy would deal with abandonment issues her whole life, something in his book Mitch takes no responsibility for. Whatever Amy may have felt about it, she giggled on the news and asked for a hamster, which she was given. Around this time, Janice began to experience health problems that were the early onset of multiple sclerosis. Her best friend at school, whom she stayed friends with for most of her life, was Juliette Ashby, and they formed a salt and pepper tribute group called Sweet and Sour. Performing in their bedrooms, the two girls were inseparable, getting into trouble by making each other laugh through classes in school. In 2007, when Amy returned to her primary school for an interview, her and Juliette pulled the fire alarm and ran off. "Thing is, we always wanted to do it when we were here, but never had the bottle," Amy said. Amy was clever but bored by school and loved making trouble. Her mother described her as complicated and troublesome. In her teens, she would oversleep and began to self-harm. She also wrote biographical poetry, but what she really wanted to do was sing. "My brother was listening to like these I Want to Die bands. I had a flirtation with that. I must have been 9. Then I heard Salt and Pepper, and I was like, that's mine," Amy said. Then Alex listened to Thelonious Monk and Ray Charles, and Amy would listen through the walls. At the end of secondary school, she sang Alanis Morissette's Ironic, and the school stood up and cheered. At 13, she applied to Sylvia Young Theatre School. She didn't even tell her parents until she was accepted and received a scholarship. On her application, she wrote, "I have this dream to be very famous, to work on stage. I want people to hear my voice and just forget their troubles for 5 minutes, to be remembered for being just me." Sylvia immediately recognized her talent, believing her abilities could put her in the same league as Judy Garland or Ella Fitzgerald. Amy took ballet, tap, and singing, and was even bumped up a year to keep her engaged. She had no time for her compulsory subjects and was in danger of failing her GCSEs, and a teacher recommended that she leave the school. Sylvia tried to persuade her against it, but it was too late, and she left the school to study at an independent one nearby. After school, she would smoke weed with Janice as they listened to music, sometimes drinking alcohol they could get an older student to buy. Amy got a D in music. After she left school, she worked several odd jobs, but always as she had done since she was a child, scribbled ideas for songs in her notebooks. Everyone recognized Amy's undeniable talent, and it was a school friend who recommended her to the talent agency Brilliant 19. Amy then had her first serious boyfriend, Chris Taylor, who would inspire many of the songs that would be on her debut album, Frank. Brilliant put her in touch with EMI, and within 20 minutes they signed her, giving her a £73,000 advance. Her early songs focused on jazz with a bit of storytelling, using the things that had inspired her in life. She was sent to Miami to make the album, where she worked with several producers. Her songs told the story of their relationship with clever wordplay and brilliant music, and her voice appealed to older listeners, her lyrics to younger ones. The success of her first album, Frank, made her known in the right circles, but she was not so famous that she couldn't go out clubbing with her friends. Amy herself was unhappy with the album. She didn't have much say in many aspects of it, and felt it was too poppy and didn't capture the vibe she was going for. As the cameras began to focus on her, she began to drink more heavily and developed an eating disorder. "Mom," she said, "I found this great new diet. I can eat whatever I want, then just throw it up." She said it with Amy's trademark irony, and her mother thought it was a joke. Through her frequent vomiting, she lost several teeth and began to develop problems with her heart. In 2004, she won her first major award, an Ivor Novello, which remained the award she was proudest of, beating out Dizzy Rascal and Kylie Minogue. As was usually the case with Amy, she turned up an hour late for the show. When it was over, she drove to her mom's house and handed it to her. "This is for you," she said. At the time, her mother was having dizzy spells, and it was confirmed she had second-degree MS. Amy began to enjoy life, going out to clubs and pubs every night, and it was then she met Blake Fielder Civil, a bartender who hung out with local lads. Their relationship was messy from the start. She adapted to his likes and dislikes, and most of her old friends said Amy had changed. She began to drink heavier and heavier to keep up with him and his friends. "He doesn't smoke a lot, but he does drink a lot," said Amy. "So I changed to keep up." The press was taken by their public displays of affection, and Blake enjoyed his new status, going to pubs with Amy and buying drinks for everyone, getting Amy to pay for it. They would stay up late, as Blake would invite his friends and drug dealers over, drinking and partying till dawn. She began to get tattoos and changed her style as well to match his. After 7 intense months, Blake broke up with her to go back to the girl he had been dating before, which was the inspiration for her song, Back to Black. "I thought we would never see each other again," she said in 2008. "I thought I'd die." Amy was heartbroken, and she was only writing bits of songs. She spent all day drinking vodka and wine, listening to sad music from the 60s till she passed out. Her weight continued to plummet. By spring 2005, something had to give. "I was in a bad way," she told the Daily Record. "I was definitely drinking too much. The kind of things I was getting into were a joke. I do drink a lot, and I'm a bad drunk, a very violent drunk," she said. On a night out with her new boyfriend, she punched a fan in the face who came up and hugged her. When Amy's boyfriend tried to calm her down, she punched him too. "It really embarrasses me that I punched my boyfriend Alex in the face 6 times again, but he can take it. He's a big guy. I'm a little girl," she told the media. The label wanted her to go into rehab. She was against the idea. She didn't want people probing her. She asked her dad if she should go, and Mitch, still in denial about Amy's problems, said she didn't need it. "I drink because I was in love, and I fucked up the relationship and I walked out," she told friends. "I'm from the school that believes you can sort yourself out. You can't rely on other people to fix your problems." Brilliance urging her to go to rehab meant she wanted to sever their relationship. To Amy, they had no right to do that to her, and she hired Ray Cosbert as her new manager. Back to Black took her about 6 months to write in the end. In 2005, she met Mark Ronson. She wasn't thrilled with meeting him, but her manager told her it would benefit everyone. Amy warmed to him almost instantly. He became like a brother to her, and they flew to New York to record in his studio using vintage 50s equipment to give the songs the feel she wanted. They wrote Rehab almost instinctively. I sang the hook, kind of as a joke. Mark started laughing, saying, "Whose song is that?" I said, "It's just a joke I've been singing." He responded with, "It would be so cool if you had a whole song about rehab." I said, "I could write it right now," and we finished it in a few hours. During recording, she often had a drink in the booth with her, but for once, Amy was on time every day. So much of what Amy went through in her life was poured into Back to Black, an album that should have been the beginning, was instead the end. Rehab, a jaunty pop song, when published, is listened to now as denial, fear, her lambasting herself, and the song becomes much sadder. The songs burn with her fear she will always be left alone. Sometimes you can listen to it one way, sometimes another. It doesn't sound like anything else made at that time. Back to Black sounds like being in an endless loop, stuck in a circle. He'll go back to her, and I'll go back to black. Back to Black became the best-selling album of 2007. In the US, it was the highest debut for a foreign female of all time and catapulted Amy into the stratospheric level. Sadly, her drinking only increased. On the Charlotte Church show where she performed Beat It, she had become bored waiting in the back and drank as much as she could in the green room. By the time they performed, Amy wandered around the stage looking dazed. She is off the beat and slurring the words. Church tries to hold it together as the camera tries to shoot away from Amy. Charlotte said Amy kept forgetting the words. Janice was horrified. The label was worried. Amy, unabashed and unrepentant, laughed it off. In November 2006, she took part in the panel show Never Mind the Buzzcocks. As the quiz wore on, it became clear Amy was drunk. Amy leaned back in her chair. She jokingly referred to an odd sound she made when standing up as my new thing. A panelist responded, "I thought your new thing was crack." Later on the show, after more wobbles by Amy, another presenter said, "This isn't even a pop quiz anymore, it's an intervention, Amy." The part that stayed with her mother was when a presenter said to her, "We used to be close. What happened to the old Amy?" Amy responded, "We are close, but she's dead." He then asked, "Can we resuscitate the old Winehouse?" "She's dead," said Amy again. At the time, these antics gave Amy the air of a rock and roll icon. They were entertaining to the public and the media, who liked Amy's defiant ways. She became a favorite of the tabloids. Paparazzi camped outside her house all hours of the day and night. Her tattoos became a sleeve, with the most noticeable, a topless woman that said "Daddy's Girl," and a button-down pocket above her heart with the name Blake on it. In 2007, Amy Winehouse was played everywhere. Her music sounded in clubs, cafes, and bars. She was a star. "Are you proud of me, Dad?" she asked when her album hit #1. Her father writes in his book about Back to Black, "It occurs to me that one of the biggest selling songs of the 21st century is about a low-life scumbag, one of the biggest that God ever put life into," he said, referring, of course, to Blake. By the beginning of 2008, she was cheating on her boyfriend Alex with Blake and began smoking heroin. Alex said he could smell the drug on her and went to her father, who shrugged it off. Saying his daughter wouldn't do that, Alex was wrong. Soon, she broke up with Alex and was back full-time with Blake. Her family noted that Blake had dumped her when her career had stalled and now took her back when it was skyrocketing. Blake and Amy became inseparable. He was included in every part of her life, every conversation she had, every decision she made. He was consulted. He was Amy's world. In May in 2007, Amy and Blake disappeared to Miami together. A few days later, she rang her mom to say they had gotten married with no friends or family around them. Her mom, Janice, was deeply hurt. Her family felt that Blake had bullied her into it, and he didn't want any family around that might talk her out of it. They already didn't trust him and worried about his influence. Now they felt they were losing their daughter completely. The first terrifying indication that something was wrong with Amy's health came that summer. Amy and Blake were alone in Amy's flat. Amy went pale and collapsed. Her body was jerking on the floor. He wrestled her into the recovery position and phoned Amy's friend Juliette rather than the police. She drove over to take Amy to hospital, which was more than an hour after she fell ill. Blake immediately left, not wanting to get into trouble with the police. Amy had her stomach pumped. A lab report showed she had heroin, cocaine, ketamine, and marijuana in her system. All illusions her family had about Amy's drug use were gone. For a long time, they believed the press had it in for Amy, that she was just drinking. The report that day meant it was all true. Her family and friends checked her into a hotel and spoke how they could get Blake out of her life. Her brother shouted at her, "You are going to kill yourself." As Amy clutched her mother, pale and shaking, saying, "I'm sorry, Mommy." Again, she refused rehab, and at 10 p.m. Blake arrived, and by 11, the doctor informed Mitch that Amy had taken something he thought was crack cocaine. The press had gathered outside waiting for any photo or word, as did Blake's parents, who blamed everything on Amy, not believing their son had a problem. The families argued, tempers flared, and Mitch and Blake's stepfather got into a screaming match. Eventually, Amy agreed to go to a hospital on Osha Island, only if Blake could come with her. Yet somehow, they were still able to get drugs on the island. They spent a total of 5 days there before leaving and checking themselves into the Sanderson Hotel, where fights ensued between Amy and her brother and Amy and Blake. Furniture was thrown, and the next day photos showed Amy bruised and bloody and Blake with scratch marks on his face. Amy said of the incident, "Blake is the best man in the world. I was cutting myself after he found me in the room with a call girl about to do drugs, and he said I wasn't good enough for him. I lost it, and he saved my life." Amy was now never out of the press. The public and the media were hungry for all things Amy. In September, the papers ran photos of Amy with what appeared to be tracks on her arm. On her European tour that autumn, she and Blake were arrested for marijuana possession. Stories in the papers would run on the flimsiest of sources, about Amy dying in Blake's arms, about them having wild parties, anything to get a story on Amy. Her addictions became a punchline in the public and on TV. That year, she won a MOBO and an MTV award. The plan was to launch Amy in America, but after failing a drug test, she was denied a US visa. Blake was due in court for GBH and for trying to bribe the victims, and when he didn't show, they raided his flat with Amy, and they took Blake away in handcuffs as Amy banged on the window of the car, saying, "I love you." With Blake gone, she was put on Subutex, a drug meant to wean you off heroin, but she was spiraling further out of control. On stage at one of her shows, when she appeared out of it, the crowd booed her. She responded angrily at the crowd, saying, "First of all, if you are booing, you are a mug for buying the ticket. Second of all, just wait till my husband gets out of incarceration, and I mean that." During the tour, she stopped singing Back to Black, as it hurt her too much to sing with Blake gone. She was named as an official suspect in Blake's case, as it was believed she was the one providing the money for the bribe. She was released on bail without restrictions. However, her musical success just grew. At the end of the year, she had been nominated for 6 Grammys and was asked to sing at the awards in February 2008. She needed to be tested for drugs on the 15th of January in order to make the trip to America. On the day of the test, the newspaper The Sun showed photos of Amy apparently taking crack cocaine that were taken by Blake's friends and sold to the newspaper. Her record label finally put their foot down. No Grammys, no Brits, no performances until she went to rehab. She finally agreed and entered hospital. However, a friend of her and Blake smuggled drugs in with a teddy bear, and Amy used in the hospital. As she wasn't sectioned, she could leave anytime she wanted, and she did. She had no interest in wasting time in the hospital, and she was still able to perform at the Grammys via a link-up from London. She won 5 Grammys, including Album of the Year and Song of the Year. However, to Amy, it meant nothing. Backstage, she said to her friend, "This is so boring without drugs," and within a few hours, drugs were delivered to her hotel, and she was back on. Family members describe her during this time as empty, not quite whole. After performing a private party for Roman Abramovich, her eyes rolled back and she collapsed. She was rushed to the clinic, The test results said she had nodules on her vocal cords, a growth had appeared in her chest cavity, and had early stages of emphysema. The news scared Amy, but not enough to make her stop using. At a concert for Nelson Mandela, she shook his hand and said, "Mr. Mandela, my husband and you have a lot in common. You both spent a lot of time in prison." People were also annoyed when she rankled up the words of Free Nelson Mandela to Free Blakey, my fella. Blake was sentenced to 27 months in prison, and Amy was consumed by grief, unable to even leave the house. All the while, the media followed her every step, hungry for the next fall, the next slur. Blake would write her and say they were Bonnie and Clyde and be together forever. The next day, he would call Mitch and say he would divorce her for a sum of money. Her place was a mess, with anywhere between 16 to 20 cats living with her, junk food wrappers and bottles everywhere. Her cleaners came twice a week, but the rest of the time, it was full of cat feces. In July, Blake and Amy's divorce was finalized, but they were still in constant contact. Amy's behavior grew increasingly erratic. At a children's pantomime show in December 2009, she began shouting at the stage, "Fuck Cinder, marry me, Prince Charming." A few days later, she was arrested for assault. She was still seeing Blake, and they talked about remarrying, but Amy met someone else and fell in love. Her new man, Reg Travis, was a filmmaker, and again the rumors surfaced that he was using Amy to gain notoriety, but Amy spoke of settling down with him and having children, but her addictions continued. On a tour of Eastern Europe, on her first night in Serbia, she lost her place, sat down on stage, barely sang, and the crowd booed louder and louder as the set wore on.
Okay, can I ask you something as an audience?
She was confused and lost, seemingly having no idea where she was. Reports say Amy had wanted to cancel the tour, but was put on the plane while she was passed out. On the day before she died, she invited her father over. She had been going through photos and had found some that she thought were lost. Mitch and Amy spent the day looking at the photos and laughing. Mitch was going to New York to play some shows and said they would perform a song together when he came back. It was something they had said before, but it was never to happen. Her mother arrived the next day to spend time with her. Amy was still asleep. Janice looked through the photos on the table. There were smashed wine bottles everywhere. Finally, her bodyguard, Andrew, fetched her. She was slurring her words as she sat with her mom for the last time. Janice had never known her so drunk. Slowly, Amy came round, picking up photos, trying to focus on them. After another 20 minutes, with no one saying anything, Janice said, "We are going to go now, Amy." Amy hugged her and cried into her neck before Janice left. Amy spent the rest of the day laying on the couch, watching YouTube videos of herself. She had Andrew, her bodyguard, watch with her. She was showing me some clips on her laptop, he remembers. She said, "Boy, can I sing?" And I was like, "Fucking right you can." The next day, as per usual, Amy was not up early. He checked on her and saw her face smudged in the pillow and thought nothing of it. 4 hours later, he checked on her again and a chill ran down his spine. She had not moved at all. The room smelled of vodka and vomit. He went over to her, and she was still. He could see she wasn't breathing. Amy Winehouse was dead at 27.
Let me bring you some breaking news now. Coming into us from Sky Sources, the singer Amy Winehouse has been found dead in her North London flat, just 27 years old.
News vans and devastated fans lined the pavement outside her house. Fans were leaving tributes, from bottles of wine and vodka to cigarettes and paintings. Her service was short, private, and emotional. She was dressed in the iconic yellow dress she wore at the Brits in 2007, while the Carole King song "So Far Away" closed the service. As the final notes of Amy Winehouse's tumultuous yet extraordinary life fade into a quiet silence, we are left with the echoes of her voice, a lasting testament to a talent that knew no bounds, and a spirit too vibrant for the shadows that chased her. Through her music, Amy spoke to the heartache and joys of a generation, crafting melodies that blend sorrow with irony and pain with beauty. Her legacy is not defined by the struggles she endured, but by the raw emotion and profound humanity she captured in her art. In remembering Amy, we do not merely recall the spectacle of her public life, but we honor the depth of her contributions to music and culture, gifts that continue to inspire and resonate. Amy Winehouse was more than a headline. She was a voice that, once heard, is never forgotten, immortalized in the soulful legacy she leaves behind. Thanks for watching this video on Amy Winehouse. Please like, share, and subscribe for more.